Hello, today I'm going to discuss about body cavity. What is body cavity exactly means? So before starting your anatomy or physiology as a subject, you must know that all your internal organs, all your structures lies in a cavity. Now what is cavity? Cavity simply means fluid filled spaces or space. So we also call it as compartment, like, and we call it as anterior compartment, also known as ventral compartment, posterior compartment, dorsal compartment. So these are the compartments uh, in which internal organs, all your structure lies. It is fluid filled basically, also known as potential spaces in our body. So before starting on anatomy or physiology, we must know that our body is basically divided into two compartments, ventral compartment and dorsal compartment, and all our structures lies in these compartment only. For example, our brain lies in cranial cavity, our spinal cord lies in spinal cavity, our liver, stomach lies in abdominal cavity. Okay, so these all are cavity, and we will discuss about it. So here we can see that this is body cavity. Okay, this is our brain and this is what spinal cord is going. So brain जहाँ पर है वो हमारी cranial cavity है, ठीक है, and the spinal cord is in spinal cavity. So these are the spaces which are fluid filled. Okay, these are fluid filled spaces. So here brain is present in cranial cavity. It all comes under dorsal cavity. So this is posterior. Okay, as you all know, this is posterior portion and this is also known as dorsal cavity. So these are the space in which fluid is filled, and this spinal cord is here, lies here in this space, in this fluid filled cavity only, and this is what we call it as body cavity. Now this brain is in cranial cavity, this spine is in spinal cavity, and together we call it as a dorsal cavity because it is present in the posterior side of our body. Posterior means पीछे की तरफ, तो पीछे की तरफ ही present है हमारे. So that's why we call it as posterior cavity, that is cranial cavity and spinal cavity. Now when we come to our ventral cavity, ventral means what? Anterior. So when we talk about this anterior structures, दिस इज़ आवर थोरेसिक कैविटी, जहाँ पे लंग्स होगा, मिडिस्टैनम होगा और ट्रैकिया होगा, ये सब चीज़ें होंगी यहाँ पे हमारे थोरेसिक कैविटी में. एंड देन कम्स आवर एब्डोमिनल कैविटीज, ये सब पार्ट है इंटीरियर कैविटी का. एब्डोमिनल कैविटी, पेल्विक कैविटी, दिस ऑल आर प्रेजेंट इन इंटीरियर ऑफ आवर बॉडी, सो दैट इज़ वाई वी कॉल इट एज इंटीरियर कैविटी. And all together it is known as ventral cavity. Ventral means interior. So our thoracic cavity, our abdominal cavity, our pelvic cavity, all are present in the interior of our body, so it is known as anterior cavity or ventral cavity. And our spinal cord, our cranial our brain is present in cranial cavity, so we call it as dorsal cavity. It comes under dorsal cavity. So here we can see there are two largest human body cavity, that is ventral cavity and dorsal cavity. Now what is dorsal cavity? Brain, spinal cord are located. The membranes that surround the central nervous system. See, membrane भी तो surround करता है ना central nervous system को. It also comes under dorsal cavity only. So membrane that surround the central nervous system organs, the brain and the spinal cord in the cranial and the spinal cavity. So this is what the body cavity means. Now we will discuss more about. So as I already told, there are two cavities, that is the dorsal posterior and the ventral, that is anterior cavity. The dorsal body cavity. Dorsal body cavity includes skull and it contains brain and the spinal cavity enclosed by the spine and contains spinal cord. The ventral body cavity includes thoracic cavity. Ventral means anterior, so as we can already see here, thoracic cavity is present at the anterior side of the body. Also the abdominal cavity and also the pelvic cavity, these all are present in the anterior or ventral side of the body, also known as ventral cavity. So thoracic cavity enclosed by the rib cage contains lungs, heart and abdominopelvic cavity. What is abdominopelvic cavity? Abdominopelvic cavity, this is abdominal. This is abdominal and it lies, and all the structures lies in abdominal cavity, which are liver, intestines, gallbladder, stomach, and all these things lies in abdominal cavity. And when I talk about pelvic cavity, uterus, kidney, these all structures or organs lies in pelvic cavity. Together we call it as abdominal cavity. As we can already see here, Abdominal cavity can be divided into abdominal cavity enclosed by rib cage and pelvis. Contains the kidney, uterus. This kidney and uterus comes under pelvic cavity. Stomach, intestine, liver, gallbladder, the pancreas. ये सब आते हैं हमारे pelvic cavity के अंदर. Enclosed by the pelvis and contains bladder. These all are under what? Pelvic cavity. Bladder, anus, reproductive system, pelvis. These all are the part which are under pelvic cavity, and these all stomach, intestine, liver, gallbladder, these all are under our abdominal cavity. Together we call it as abdominopelvic cavity. Now if we talk about ventral cavity, it includes heart, stomach, intestine, reproductive organs, anterior cavity. So what is the major difference between the ventral and the dorsal cavity is organs such as lungs, stomach or uterus, for example, can expand or contract without distorting the other structure. When we inhale the air, the lungs expand, and we exhale the air, lungs contract. So this contraction and retraction, expansion of our lungs, these all are taking place. These all are changing their shapes without distorting the other tissues, without किसी भी चीज़, किसी भी स्ट्रक्चर और किसी भी टिश्यू को नुकसान पहुंचाए बिना, these all structures are working. So it is the major difference between the dorsal and the anterior cavity, that the organs present in the anterior organs such as lungs, stomach or uterus can expand or contract without distorting the other tissue. किसी भी टिश्यू को नुकसान पहुंचाए बिना, these all are performing their functions, changing their shape continuously while performing their particular task, their functions. So now when we come to the thoracic cavity is also present in the interior cavity only. This is the thoracic cavity. So in thoracic cavity fills with the chest and is subdivided into two pleural cavities, and pericardial cavity holds the heart. Pericardial cavity. So this is the pericardial cavity. Again one more cavity, we can see that this is pericardial. It is also present in anterior part. So this is also one more cavity inside which the heart is present, and it holds the heart. It protects the heart. The abdominopelvic cavity fills the lower half of the trunk. So we can see that abdominopelvic cavity, this is the lower half of the trunk. So abdominopelvic cavity is filling the lower part of the trunk. So abdominopelvic fills the lower half of the trunk and is divided into abdominal cavity and pelvic cavity, as I already discussed. The abdominal cavity holds the digestive organs. So all the digestive organs like stomach, liver, your intestine, small intestine, large intestine, all these organs, and kidney, all these digestive organs lies in abdominal cavity, and kidney, uterus, anus, all this lies in pelvic cavity, holds reproductive organs and organs of excretions, that is anus, and one more rectum. Dorsal cavity. The dorsal cavity is at the posterior or back of the body. As I already told, it is composed of brain and spinal cord, both head and back of the trunk subdivision, that is cranial cavity and spinal cavity. So the brain and the spinal cord are protected by the bones of the skull and the vertebrae of the spine. So brain जो है वो protected है skull से, जो हमारी स्पाइनल कॉर्ड है वो वर्टिब्रे से प्रोटेक्टेड है. दे आर फर्दर प्रोटेक्टेड बाय मेनिंजेस. आगे चलेंगे तो मेनिंजेस से प्रोटेक्टेड है. मेनिंजेस पता होगा, मेनिंजेस आर थ्री लेयर मेम्ब्रेन दैट इनक्लोजेस ब्रेन एंड स्पाइनल कॉर्ड. ओके, द लेयर ऑफ द cerebrospinal fluid is maintained between these two layers of meninges. There are three layers of meninges और हर दो meninges के बीच में cerebrospinal fluid होता है. और जो कि जब किसी को मेनिंजाइटिस हो जाता है, मेनिंजाइटिस में क्या होता है, मेनिंजेस इन्फ्लेम हो जाते हैं, मेनिंजेस की वॉल्स इन्फ्लेम हो जाती हैं, तो सेरिब्रोस्पाइनल फ्लूइड ही लिया जाता है चेक करने के लिए कि वेदर देयर इज़ एनी बैक्टीरियल और वायरल साइंस, सो दैट वी कैन डायग्नोज दिस पर्टिकुलर पर्सन विद अ meningitis. Meningitis means inflammation of meninges. So the clear fluid is produced by the brain and it provides extra protection and cushioning to the brain and spinal cord. So this cerebrospinal fluid protects the brain and spinal cord. It provides the extra cushioning to these structures.